Hi everyone. So today we are going to be looking at the digestive system. So hopefully you've already downloaded those notes for yourself so you're able to easily follow along. Okay, so let me just get this going. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we will be starting off with the digestive system today. So before we get into the parts of the digestive system, I just want to talk about digestion as a whole. We've probably heard of the term metabolism before. Oh, somebody has a fast metabolism, somebody has a slow metabolism. So what does that actually mean? Well, metabolism is everything that happens in your body together, and it's going to turn all of your food into energy. And when we turn food into energy, then that is what gives us the power to do the things that we do in our normal everyday lives. So things that are part of your metabolism, breathing, we don't think about breathing as needing energy, but the fact that our lungs are taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide through the use of the diaphragm, digestion being one of them, which we're going to talk more about today. We spoke a little bit about how when we shiver, when we're cold, is the way our body responds to maintaining that homeostasis. Well, metabolism is a part of that as well, because what's giving us our energy for that process is our metabolism. So one thing about metabolism that's pretty interesting is that it does tend to slow down as you get older. So children your age and younger, and even a little bit older, tend to have tend to have a higher metabolism. So that's why you can eat many more calories than, let's say, I do, and you don't turn what you don't use into fat. Whereas if I don't use it, my body will much more easily turn it into fat. Actually, this next week, I'm going to have you do a little digestion lab that's going to look at some food that you might eat during a typical day to see how your calorie intake differs from maybe somebody my age. So we're going to get into that. So like I said, the faster metabolism, the quicker that you burn calories. So, and digestion is a part of that metabolism. So digestion, to digest, means to break down food. Okay, so think about something that you ate today. Maybe it was a piece of bread. So by the time the piece of bread enters your mouth, it goes through this whole process before it even gets down into your stomach and your small intestines, which we'll talk about today. But then when it gets there, it goes through an even deeper process, because remember, the whole point of eating is to get energy. So in order to do that, these molecules have to be so tiny they're able to fit in through that cell membrane to get into the cell. Because, to kind of bring it back to where we started from when we started talking about cells, we need the mitochondria to then break down that food into energy, that ATP energy. So nutrients, things that cause us to grow and to live. So your carbohydrates are a nutrient. Your lipids, AKA fats, are nutrients. I know you probably think to yourself, oh, I think fats are bad. You know what? Some fats are bad. So there are good fats as well. And like everything, in moderation. So, we've always seen that food pyramid, which we'll talk more about as well. So we've seen that food pyramid, and always at the top is your fats or your sugars that you're not supposed to have as much of. But like anything else, to have that complete pyramid is going to be beneficial for your body as well. So there are such thing as good fats and bad fats. Also, your proteins, another source of energy. I'm sorry, not a source of energy, but a source of a building block, which are going to build muscles and other important parts within the cell. So these are all the nutrients that your body are using to cause your body to grow and to live. There are other things such as vitamins and minerals and water, those types of things. They don't necessarily give us the energy we need, but they are very important within the whole digestive and the whole living process. All of these things are needed in order for us to live. So there are two main types of digestion. First type of digestion is your mechanical digestion, and this is going to occur in the mouth. This is the actual physical tearing and shredding of the food. So initially, let's go back to that piece of bread idea. So you take a piece of bread, you put it in your mouth, it's a big piece. As you're chewing, your tongue is kind of moving it around, it's kind of sloshing around, your saliva is getting involved there. All of that stuff is part of digestion, but the actual physical moving of the food and the tearing of the food actually is what is mechanical digestion. Yes, mechanical digestion, I'm sorry. I wanted to say something else, but it'll come to me. So chemical digestion now is when we're going to take those food molecules and we're going to break them down even more. So this is when your saliva is going to come into play. So all around your mouth on the inside, you don't see them. They're like in the walls of your cheeks. You've got salivary glands and they release saliva. So that if you want to try this at home, it's pretty cool. If you have a cracker at home, take it, put it in the center of your tongue and just close your mouth and just wait about 20 to 30 seconds. Within 20 to 30 seconds, that cracker, without even using your teeth, is going to be, I would say, 75% digested at that point, because the salivary amylase, which is the name of the enzyme inside of the saliva that's going to break all that stuff down, really works very well on carbohydrates. So if you do have a cracker at home, I would suggest you giving it a try. It's pretty cool. Inside of your stomach, you also have gastric juices. Okay, so there's hydrochloric acid inside of our stomach. That's why if you were to get sick with a stomach bug, your esophagus feels very sore afterwards, because the acid literally has burned the cells of your esophagus, which gives you like a sore throat sometimes afterwards. So the fact that our pH in our stomach is so low actually is a protector for the body. We'll talk about that when we get to the immune system. But it also helps with the digestive process. And then you have the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder, three very important organs that are part of the digestive system, but they're not along the path that food travels down. So when I go over that part in the next set of notes, I'll point it out for you so you understand what I'm saying. So mechanical and chemical digestion. Very interesting. So I do remember what I wanted to say. So mechanical digestion, do you know that they say to really chew your food well? Does anybody know how many times you should be chewing your food? They actually say between 20 and 25 chews per bite of food is really chewing your food well. So do me a favor, when you're eating dinner or eating lunch at some point, today or tomorrow, see how long, how many times you actually chew before you swallow your food. It's pretty interesting. Most people don't come anywhere near 20 or 25 times. Okay, so here is the digestive system as a whole. So don't freak out. Take a minute. I know you're probably labeling all the parts on the sheet. Okay, so let's just go through this. So here we always start off at the mouth, okay? We just talked about how that mechanical and chemical digestion happens, because here's the mouth and here are the salivary glands, okay? So you can see from the mouth, the food will now travel down the esophagus, okay? Now, don't stress out. We're going to go over what each of these things do in a minute. I just want you to understand the overall path, okay? Then you've got the stomach here. So we went from the mouth, down the esophagus, down the stomach, okay? When it's in the stomach, it's then going to go into the small intestines. The small intestines are these little guys in the middle, okay? And then it's going to make its way into the large intestines, which actually wraps all the way around here, down into the rectum, and then out the anus, which is how our feces is removed. So mouth, esophagus, stomach, mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestines, large intestines, rectum, and then anus is the way the food is going to travel down. Please put a star next to the salivary glands, the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Okay, let me tell you why we're going to put a star next to those. They are all very important parts of the digestive system. However, no food passes through there. So in the salivary glands, they're just going to they're going to just drop saliva into the mouth so that it does its job where it's using that mechanical and chemical digestion together. And then the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas are going to add stuff along the way that are going to help with digestion as well, that chemical digestion. Oh, I forgot the appendix down here. Also another one I would put a star next to because no food travels through it. This is very interesting, the appendix. It's called a vestigial structure. We're going to talk about that. Okay, so now that we have an overview of the digestive system, why don't we take time and talk about each part individually? Okay, so the mouth we kind of already spoke about. It's where your mechanical digestion is. It's where your teeth and your tongue are going to tear that food. And then your salivary glands are the chemical digestion that we talked about, how it's going to add saliva to the food to start with that breakdown, especially of those carbohydrates. Remember what I said about that, having that cracker? It's very interesting. Give it a try. So then we're going down the esophagus. Now the esophagus has this very interesting movement known as peristalsis. So I want you to think about a toothpaste tube, okay? And you're getting to the end of the toothpaste tube where you only have a couple of days of the toothpaste left. So what do? You take it and you squeeze it and you squeeze it and you squeeze it until it's at the end, right? So what are you doing? You're basically using your hands and you're pinching it and pushing it down. Well, that's how our esophagus works. When food enters, the esophagus actually pinches, and then the next section pinches, and then the next section pinches, and then the next section pinches the whole way down. So if you've ever got like a chip stuck, like if you have like a Dorito or something and you get it stuck in your throat and you feel it there, but you're not choking or anything. It's not like you can't breathe. So you feel the chip there, and then within 30 to 60 seconds later, it's not there anymore. That's that peristalsis working. That's the pushing down of the food. So it's a muscle contraction where it's like push, 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 push. So it does this process. So pretty interesting. Now the esophagus has this little flappy thing we're gonna talk about in a second. It's called the epiglottis, okay? So the epiglottis actually covers the trachea. So believe it or not, your esophagus is a tube and your trachea is a tube, and they are literally like this, right next to each other. So if you feel right here on yourself, you'll feel like the ridges right here. That's your trachea. Right behind it is your esophagus. So what happens is you've got these two tubes right next to each other, and when food is swallowed, the epiglottis goes down, and that prevents food from going into the trachea. Why do people choke? Because they're trying to usually talk and eat at the same time. And that poor epiglottis is usually open when, like right now, I'm not eating, my epiglottis is in an open position. But if I were to eat something, as soon as I eat something and I swallow, that epiglottis is going to close. So what happens when people are talking and eating? The poor epiglottis is like, do I close? Do I open? Do I close? Do I open? Do I close? Do I open? Well, that is what causes people to choke, because the epiglottis doesn't make it in time, and then food goes down the wrong pipe. Well, the wrong pipe in this case is a trachea, your windpipe, which leads to your lungs. So that's what causes people to choke. So down the esophagus, now we're in the stomach, where we have our gastric juices, our hydrochloric acid, a lot of chemical digestion. Hydrochloric acid is very, very, very low pH, which is the reason why your stomach sometimes hurt if you're very stressed out. Sometimes your stomach hurts because our body responds to stress in different ways, and some people produce more acid, which causes our stomach to hurt. So what do? We usually take like Pepto-Bismol or Mylanta. Why? those are things that have pHs that are like 9, 10. So what happens is, let's say I had a really bad day and my stomach had a very, very low pH. Well, once I add that 10 pH, it's going to cause my pH in my stomach to rise, which is not now going to cause not so much pain in my stomach. So that's the reason why we usually use Pepto-Bismol or Mylanta to help us when we have an upset stomach that's not related to like a virus. Okay, so these next 3 organs that we're going to talk about are organs that are going to add stuff to the digestive system, but no food goes through it. First one is the liver. It's going to produce bile, and bile is going to break down fats. Remember what we talked about with the salivary amylase in the mouth, that was breaking down carbohydrates. Now the liver is going to help us produce this bile to actually break down fats. And the liver is huge filter of the body. So when people abuse alcohol, they tend to get what is known as cirrhosis of the liver, which is like a liver cancer. And that's because their body is being forced to work harder than it has to. So it's constantly filtering out that alcohol, which causes the buildup of that into the liver, which actually causes the parts of the liver to die, which is what cirrhosis of the liver is. Next, you have the gallbladder. The gallbladder is going to store the bile and deliver it to the small intestines. So all this stuff that we're making in the liver is going to get stored in the gallbladder. I'm sure you've heard of somebody that said they had to have their gallbladder removed. That happens sometimes. So when you have your gallbladder removed, what the doctor does is they actually reroute the tube that connects the gallbladder with the liver so that the liver just keeps adding this bile into the digestive system. I believe as well, somebody that does have their gallbladder removed does have to take some type of a pill for the rest of their lives as well. Then you have the pancreas. I'm sure we've all heard of the pancreas before. So we have digestive juices as well as insulin made here. Okay, so insulin is going to be very important when you don't produce insulin or you don't produce it correctly. That's what causes somebody to have diabetes. So the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas all are making these things to help with digestion, but there's no food going through them. They're just kind of like adding stuff along the way. So if you can imagine like a tube, and then there's this like door, there's like these doors along the tube, and it just kind of opens up, adds it in as the food's going by, and then the door closes. So to kind of give you a visual with that. Okay. So the pancreas also very important for breaking down all sorts of things, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Okay, so now here's where the food is entering the small intestines after it has left the stomach. So the small intestines have these things called villi inside of them. So if you can kind of imagine this, here's the small intestines. It's got these finger-like projections that are all on the inside of the small intestines. So what happens is each of the food actually goes through these fingers, and you're thinking to yourself, why would that happen? Why would the body do that? Well, very simple. It increases surface area. So if you have a tube like this is the only area around that actually can absorb nutrients. But if you put these finger-like projections inside of the small intestines and the food has to go through that, each one of those villi are going to be filled with capillaries, blood vessels, that are going to be able to easily absorb the nutrients from the food and bring it to where it has to go. So it's going to put it into the blood, and then it's going to deliver it all around the body, wherever it needs to be. So the small intestines is 7 meters long. That's about 30 feet. So if you can kind of envision this, there's 30 feet of intestines, small intestines, like all wrapped up inside you in your gut area. It's very difficult to imagine. If you were to think about this logically, if you can think about the classroom, the science classroom we were in, if you were to take the small intestines, it would spread out almost the entire length of the room. And that's all like bundled up inside you. Pretty interesting. Next, we have the large intestines. So the large intestines is going to absorb a lot of leftover water. It's going to absorb any leftover nutrients that cannot get into the small intestine. Okay. And this is where we start to collect all the things our body is not going to use. So when you remove waste through feces, that is your body's way of saying whatever is coming out of you is the stuff that your body could not digest. For example, fiber. So fruits and vegetables are very high in fiber. So fiber is very, very good for you because it actually helps with your digestive system. So the fiber is good to eat, and it goes through your entire digestive system, and it actually helps clean out your digestive system by removing stuff that might get stuck along the way. And think of those villi, those finger-like projections. There might be stuff that gets stuck in between, and the fiber, since our body can't digest it, and that is what is removed from the body, actually it's almost like a net that like catches all of it and helps remove stuff from the body, which is very important. We don't want stuff that our body's trying to get rid of, we don't want stuff our body's trying to get rid of to stay in our body. The whole point is our body's trying to get rid of it. And so this is 1.5 meters long, around 6 feet. Okay, so significantly shorter than the small intestines, but large. So let's talk a little about the name. So small actually is talking about the opening of the intestine versus the large, which is bigger. Even though the small one is longer and the large one is shorter. So then we have the appendix. I'm sure we've heard of people having appendicitis and having their appendix removed, and it's not that big of a deal. Well, it's not that big of a deal because it's a vestigial structure, like I said before. A vestigial structure means it's something that's useless. It's something that we don't use anymore. Scientists believe that once upon a time, we did use it to help us with digestion of raw meats back in the caveman days. We're going to get into that more next year when we talk about evolution. Another vestigial structure is your tailbone, something that we don't use anymore, but has been left kind of behind as clues to our past. So that is the reason why the appendix is considered a vestigial structure. However, it is a very dangerous structure. If you are somebody who has an infection or your appendix bursts, you have to have surgery immediately because there is a lot of very dangerous chemicals inside the appendix that if that bleeds into your body, you can actually die from it. The rectum is the lower part of the large intestine, so it is part of the large intestine, it's just towards the end, and this is where our feces are going to get stored. So our body's going to build it up until we're ready to release it, obviously through the anus, which is the end of the digestive system. So just to kind of recap what we talked about. So the digestive system is pretty much a tube, okay? So food enters the mouth, the salivary glands throw saliva in, and we start that mechanical digestion with the teeth and that chemical digestion with the saliva. It's going to go down the esophagus through peristalsis, push it down into the stomach. When it's in the stomach, we're going to continue with that chemical digestion. Now, when it enters the small intestines, we're going to have 3 structures that are going to add stuff along the way. You've got your pancreas, you've got your gallbladder, and you have your liver. Okay, so those 3 things are going to make those digestive juices that are going to be added to the small intestines that are going to break down our food into the smaller pieces so that our body can absorb it and bring it to the cells to go through that process of cell respiration with the mitochondria and breaking down that food for energy. Once it goes through the small intestines, and it's got a long way to go through the small intestines, I mean, we're talking about 30 feet of small intestines, it then goes to the large intestines, where it's going to reabsorb a lot of water, and it's going to also start compacting all the stuff that we are not using as feces, which gets stored in the rectum and then ultimately out of the anus. So it is a tube from mouth to anus, one long tube. Just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add. Um, so when we meet on a Zoom chat, if you have any questions regarding this, if you have any questions regarding anything related to the digestive system, just write it down so that when we do come together, we can discuss it. Or if you are not going to be part of the Zoom chat, that's totally fine. Send me an email, send me a message through Edmodo, and I would be more than happy to answer it. So I hope you liked the little spiel on the digestive system. And I'm going to post a brain pop video for you to watch as well that also goes through this process that I think is nice to see visually as well. And that's it. We will see each other again for our next body system. Have a great day.